3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1.
It's real.
That's awesome.
Here we go. All right, so welcome. My name is Leah Little, and Steph Sarkissian is here, and she has written an amazing book called A Trip Around the Sun. So we're going to talk about that during this Amazon Live, and so I'm just going to say hello in the chat. So if you have ever thought about writing a book, or you want some inspiration, or you want to do a cool little interview with the artist, she's here to talk to us about it. So I'm going to just say hi in our chat and start things off.
Awesome.
And here we go. All right, so just to give you a little background, Steph and I know each other from production, and I've always thought that she was a really cool soul. You have a really cool vibe about you.
So do you.
And
takes one to know one, right?
Right, and we just kind of connected. So we're talking about other things at work one day, and I don't even know how we stumbled on the fact that you had written a book. I
think we were catching up, and you were like, "What have you been up to?"
Right,
no big deal. Just kind of wrote a book.
Yeah, and prior to writing a book, the cool thing is that Steph is actually a contemporary poet, which is really sort of the precursor to like how it even came into book form. So let's talk about that. What is a contemporary poet?
I guess contemporary. That term has always been kind of like interesting to me. I think it just means like you're not dead yet and you're still doing poetry. Here. Yeah. I think a lot of people think poets are dead, like poets are a thing of the past. Right. And not necessarily so. There's actually a pretty interesting scene still of written poetry and spoken poetry. Yeah. And I'm just fortunate enough to live in a city where there is a contemporary scene. Right. And I just stumbled upon an open mic one night and fell in love with it. I fell in love with the crowd, with the artistry.
Did you know that you could do this? Or you were there and it just came out of you?
Well, I had an idea that I maybe could get up there and pull it off, but I didn't know if it would be any good or
You didn't practice at home in front of a mirror?
Not really. My dog's listened to more poems than he probably ever wants to listen to, but I hadn't really practiced it. Poems just need to come out, and I think that's how it happens. People find an open mic, they find an outlet, and the art just breathes and it works.
She makes it sound like it is such a simple thing, and maybe for you as an artist, it pours out of you. I know we've talked some about, not everything is easy, but when you read the book, the poems that are in here tell a complete story, and it's fascinating to me. It's one thing to write a poem. It's another thing to write a book of poems where there's a beginning, middle, and passage happening within the book, and each one of the chapters, if you will, is a poem within there. So the level of artistry that you're going to find in this book, in my opinion, is really the next level.
That's awesome. Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you.
True. I mean, can you even write a poem? I don't even know if I could write a poem.
Sure you could. Anyone could write a poem.
Sure, one. It might not be that great. Yeah. But there are how many in the book?
16?
16?
I think there's 16 in total. 16 or 17.
So the day that it came, we were talking about it. I immediately ordered it. And then when it came, I was like, oh, I gotta read this. And I sat down and literally read it cover to cover. It was just fascinating to me. So talk to us a little bit about that. How did you get from the open mic into this whole story that unfolds here?
I almost feel like this art existed, and I was just like the vessel that somehow ended up lucky enough to present it. Because the way that it happens is sometimes so spontaneous that there's not really a easy way to explain it. It's basically just life, a year of my life, maybe 2, and then I kind of condensed it down, and just how I was feeling and my observations about the human condition and life and love, and you kind of see that evolution. So it was just me being honest and trying to put a creative spin on the honesty.
Yeah, but with a vocabulary and a language and a rhythm that even if you're not hearing it spoken, I've never heard you perform, right? But I read the book and I literally couldn't put it down, because just the rhyming and the rhythm, I don't know the language because I'm not a poet, but the rhythm that happens to the words is it's enchanting. It literally like draws you in, and you know you want more.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, there's more to it.
Definitely, yeah. When I'm writing it, I'm kind of speaking it aloud. So I think that's why it translates in that way. And I'm just glad that it translates to the reader the way that I would have read it or performed it. It makes me happy to hear that it still translates that way in writing.
If you're curious, by the way, it's in the carousel, so you can select it. If you want to ask Steph a question, you can certainly do that as well. And so let's talk about that process. You're talking about as you're writing it, you're saying it out loud. Do you handwrite? Do you write on a computer? What does that look like?
Yeah, I handwrite just because I feel like it's more authentic, you know, and then you have this notebook with stuff crossed out and it just looks like a madman who was scribbling things away. And then I do eventually type it just to have everything backed up. But yeah, definitely handwrite, and then I kind of have a web browser with a dictionary open, and then a thesaurus open, and then a web browser with rhymes open. So you could type in, let's say, the word like breeze, and say, hey Google, what words rhyme with breeze? And then based on what thoughts you want to present, you can pick another word and then build a sentence around that word.
Right, so you oscillate between kind of like right brain, left brain.
Yeah.
Because now the tools are there online. I mean, so think about this, because I'm just kind of, walking through the process in my mind as you're saying it. I mean, a few short years ago, there wasn't like, have 3 browsers open and open your thesaurus. You might have like a book.
A few books
right.
out on the table, yeah.
But then that's not, you lose your creative process, I would think.
Sure.
If you're stopping, looking at a book, or, it's a little more to it. So the tools are there.
Yeah, technology's made it much easier to reference different things as you're writing. Without losing your train of thought so much.
Right?
Yeah.
And did you depend on that a lot, or does it pour out of you and that fills in the blanks?
Sometimes it pours out kind of like a song, almost like a songwriter, where it just happens organically. But then you'll have that one line in a stanza where you're like, well, I'm out of words that rhyme with breeze. So then you can just ask Google what else rhymes with breeze, or if it's spoken word, it can be something that almost rhymes, and then you can just pronounce it in a way that it rhymes.
Right.
So you have a little bit of liberty.
Give us an example. Sure. Is there something maybe in one of the poems?
Yeah, maybe. Let's see.
Share some of these poems with us. We gotta get in there.
So there's one here where I say my wounds are washable, our difference is soluble. So washable and soluble don't exactly rhyme, but if you just change the way that you pronounce the A in wash and the O in soluble, you can almost make it rhyme. So it's the same liberties that I feel like songwriters take when they basically change the ending of a word a little bit.
Right.
Especially like in country music or in hip hop, I feel like they take those liberties with pronunciation, and it's part of the art form, really.
Yeah, flip-flop the grammatic, what's correct and what's
right.
Sometimes I'm like, wait a minute.
Right, it doesn't matter as long as the context is there, right?
Right,
yeah.
tells us, because it's about the story. It's about telling the story.
Right, and the delivery helps you tell the story.
Yeah, for sure. So how often do you perform when you're up giving that delivery?
So I perform a couple of times a month. Sometimes if there's more events than usual because of a seasonal rotation or something, it might be like 3 times a month.
Nice.
But my favorite is the open mics at the Studio 620 in St. Petersburg the last Wednesday of every month.
Nice.
It just has a very unique atmosphere, and since it's an open mic, you can kind of try things that you're working on, and you can be a little bold and see how the crowd receives it. And it just has such a receptive, fun atmosphere.
And how much do you feed off of that?
Very much. Yeah. When you have the crowd, when you have their participation and you have their attention, and you hear a few snaps, or you hear those few people that are like, me too, right. You hear those responses.
We talk about you're at church.
Yeah, exactly.
It
feels like a Sunday morning.
Yeah. So the snap is a indicator without interrupting you.
Right. So it's just a more subtle way of applauding. So you hear those, and you can be very creative. Some people do these. Some people put it down to the side. I don't know what the difference is. It's a stylistic choice. But yeah, it's really cool. And you start hearing snaps and things like that, and then you're like, all right, cool, this is working.
Right.
Like, this poem works. People are identifying with it. So.
And did you start the book that way?
Yeah.
Were these stories like coming out of you when you were doing the performance?
Yeah. So mine was just interesting period in my life that just produced art, but I was sort of keeping it to myself. And then I heard about this open mic, and I was like, I really would like to perform and see how it feels to do it spoken. I've been in musical groups before in college and in high school, so I have performed. So there was like a nostalgia to it where I was like, I know how it feels to be on stage. How does it feel to combine these mediums? And then the first time I went up there, I was like terrified, but so happy at the same time. And I was just hooked.
It's like, can you see her glow? Like, it glows out of you. Like, you connect with that. That's for real.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's just something fun about being on stage and having people relate to what you've experienced or what you've chosen to share.
Well, and that's the thing. This is so personal. I mean, this is a real story.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not just one poem. You go on this journey, this love journey with her, and there's so many different emotions that come up, right? It's that whole idea of bliss and hope, and there's twists and turns. I don't want to give it all away, but there's your emotion really comes through in the book, which is fascinating to me that it's all done through poem. So give us kind of an overview of what that looks like. How many poems are here and the journey of what this is going to share with us?
So basically, I wanted it to be like you haven't spoken to your friend in a year, and this friend has a year's worth of experiences to tell you about. But little do you know that on their journey, they were writing you postcards, taking photos and writing you postcards of all of their experiences so that they could share with you when they saw you again.
Yeah. So there is basically a postcard.
Yeah.
And the image, right? That would be.
That's right.
Yeah. So each postcard is a poem, and then you have the correlating images, which is so cool.
So it's basically telling a story of a year in a relationship. The falling in love, the getting to know someone, which should have happened before, the falling in love, realizing who someone really is, and being maybe disillusioned with what you've found. Which disagrees with what chemistry is telling you,
right.
And then just navigating that, and navigating something that goes from bliss to rocky, and then deciding that it needs to end, and then rebuilding yourself as a human being after that. And I just thought it made sense to tell it as a story and put it in some sort of cohesive order, and that's kind of how this happened.
In a story of poems.
In a story of poems,
Which just adds a whole new level, I think, of artistry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I decided to go with the black and white theme, which you can kind of see when you page through this, just to illustrate all the shades of gray, right? So there's super high highs, there are very low lows, but the real meat and potatoes of something is all the shades of gray in between. But what you remember really is the extremes, I think, which is black and white, and that's why I wanted to do the photos in monochrome, just because I felt like it told the story.
So you knew that from the outset when you were planning the photography that you wanted it to be in black and white, which is very cool. Yeah. So I'm just going to do a little flip for you here so you can kind of see up close, which is so cool. Get an idea, because the photography and the shots that are in here are fascinating. I'm a little partial because I know some of the creatives that, which I didn't know ahead of time. When I looked at the book, I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's a good team you put together.
Yeah.
So brag on your team a little bit, because you had some really cool help with this.
Yeah, I just got really fortunate with the team. Like Leah said, we know each other from working in production, and we both have a TV production background. And when I shared this idea with some of my friends who also work in production, they were like, how can I help? How can I be involved in this? And so I had a cinematographer who was my photographer, so that's why everything looks pretty cinematic, in my opinion, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
I had a producer who wanted to worry about all of, down to the minute, how much time we had for each shot.
Right.
I had a very talented model and actress who understood the character that I needed.
Yeah.
And helped me loosen up in front of the camera and pull a performance out of me.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because this isn't a book of actors doing it in the images.
Yeah.
So we have our model here, but Steph is actually in the pictures in the book, telling her story not only in poems but in literally acting it out, if you will, which I thought was so cool because I wouldn't have ever look at that. I mean,
it's a bad day.
It's one. Well, yeah, that's probably not the best portion.
It's a good shot.
But I love the fact that the emotion that you're able to convey as a model on camera, not being a model. You know, that's not your normal thing is to model in front of the camera, but to tell your story like that and be so vulnerable that the emotions come out, not only in the distance pictures like you see here, but even in some of the close-ups. I just find
there's a pretty good example there.
Right,
everything's backwards. Yeah, there it is.
I love it. And again, the lighting coming through in the background, and it's a book of art in so many different ways, which is really cool. In fact, I was talking to Darren, I said, it's amazing to me, like your work in front of the camera.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. What? I was pretty nervous that day. Yeah, I was nervous, but Brooke, our awesome model, she was able to kind of get me out of my shell a little bit, and our photographer is one of my best friends, so he made it much easier. But it was, it's definitely uncomfortable to put yourself out there, and then it was a really long day with an early morning, so I actually forgot to put on deodorant that morning.
Nice.
Just to make matters worse.
Right. Good thing you ended in the ocean.
Right. So we're like, I'm really close to this other person all day, and I'm like, I can't believe of all days that I would forget
the one thing you need.
Yeah. So there were many. They gave me a hard time all day about that. It was pretty.
And
funny.
You couldn't stop down, right? Because you did all this in one day.
We did. Yeah. We had like a 14-hour shoot day, and with the whole crew, everyone I mentioned, plus a stylist named Dana, who's fantastic. And it was just one long day where we had to get this done, and it was a lot of fun.
Right, so let me just share with you, Dallas is here, kind of nipping at our heels. So
he wants to be
wondering what we're doing over here.
Yep.
So it's just such a beautiful journey that you've shared in this, which I think is so super cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the process. It's amazing that you came up with an idea to do the book, and then you were able to have it published and get it out there. How did you come upon the thought of, I think I'll do this on Amazon?
So I did a lot of research about what it would look like to publish a book. The internet is your best friend. This age that we live in is fantastic when it comes to information. I mean, there's nothing you can't learn. There's no reason for ignorance at this point in our evolution as humanity, right?
Yeah.
So I just did a Google search. I did a Google search for how to publish a book, how to indie publish. Do you seek out a publisher? What does one even do? So based on all the research I did, it seemed like what made the most sense was to do it on Amazon. They have templates. They have a software where you upload everything and where you can format your book. And,
are you hearing this? I think that when you shared that with me, I was like, what?
Yeah.
So, because it's one thing to creatively come up with, concept or telling your story or making yourself vulnerable and being out there, whether it's in poetry like you've done in this book or whether it's, in written word, and then to know that everything is there for you to actually get past that hurdle of anxiety of do I have to shop this around, what do I do with it, do I have to buy 10,000 copies of it and sit on a shelf. So really Amazon makes that process simple for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I still hired someone to format the book for me just because this the format of this book, like you can see, it's not like a traditional novel would be. So I was a little bit unsure about things like margins and just how this was going to work once it was bound. So I did hire a graphic designer who's also a good friend of mine and was excited about the project, and she was kind enough to do the research on Amazon's platform and figure out what the dimensions, the margins, all those things needed to be. So sometimes I think it's worth spending the money and having someone do it who really knows what they're doing. It saves you a lot of time, it saves you stress, and it gives you a more professional product.
Well, and you've done the heavy lifting with the creativity and the modeling and the storytelling and the whole thing. Yeah, so to kind of take that pressure off is huge.
As far as distribution, though, it doesn't get any easier. I mean, it just lives on Amazon. and whenever someone whenever someone buys a copy, they'll print a copy and send it off. So you don't really have any costs on the front end like you would, if you went with a more traditional publisher.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, in the world of book publishing, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like it, remember, you can click on the carousel. It's there, and we're talking with the author, of course.
When she'd begun to think that she'd found the perfect package, I revealed that I was damaged. And though I feared that she would vanish, she took a look at all the baggage, and she said, "You wear it well."
You wear it well.
Yeah.
I love it. Doesn't have to rhyme. It's like, bam, just that story that's right there. And that's just one. And remember, they're like sequential, essentially, throughout. Okay, your turn.
All right, I'm trying to find one. Trying to find a good one for you. Let me see. One of my favorites. I really like this. There's a poem in here called Simple Math, and it kind of equates a relationship to a math problem. Because it sounds easy, like 1 + 1 is kind of easy until it's not,
Until it's not.
So there's a poem called Simple Math, and then let me find you that last. So the last stanza, the last photo. She's basically, she's got me in the palm of her hand. I feel like this small little fraction, which is why we composed the photo that way.
Nice.
And then it says, combining 1 and 1 should have been a simple ask, but we can complicate a simple task. So now I'm living in statistics class when we could have been some simple math.
Nice.
So it's just, finding creative ways to say something.
That is so cool.
Right, like, who wants to live in the statistics class? I'm sure there are a few people who do, but most of us don't.
Right.
So you find yourself in a difficult situation, and speaking about it and humorously or creatively starts to lift some of that weight off of there, and instead of saying, wow, this was abusive, you can be like, that was statistics class for like a year.
Right.
That was,
that was offers perspective.
Right.
Like you can, like you're talking about it in third person or something. Yeah, away from it.
Right.
Which is so cool. And it just trips off your tongue and it just spills out of you. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Spoken word is very fun. And, it is a little bit of a lost art, but it's still a thing. And you just hear these influences of the hip hop and different kinds of music from all the different poets, and it's really inspiring, and it's I don't know, the art just flows.
It's so cool. Yeah. It's cool to hear you do it in your own with your own voice.
Sure.
Of course, I've read the book, but we haven't done this. This is our first time to talk about it.
This is fun. So, I like it.
Here's one that is even when she's left, she lingers. Her melodies like memories located on the tips of my fingers. Like that song I played in piano class about 1,000 times, she's embedded in my mind.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's like a song, right? When you hear a catchy song and you can't forget about it. Some people kind of weave their way into your thoughts in the same way.
Same way, and then there's her tickling the keys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we shot that at a coffee shop. There was actually people all around. You just can't see them in the shot.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, we took these photos all around St. Pete, so we had some really interesting locations.
In one day?
In one day.
And how did you plan it all out ahead of time? Mm-hmm. Obviously, you would have had to.
We did.
It was just like weeks of like...
Yeah, so there was like... I didn't take any part in this because clearly I'm not good at math. And so there was a spreadsheet down to the minute with how much time we had in each location, time to change clothes, time to eat lunch, and my good friend Lindsay, who was the producer, she was the mastermind behind that, and she was on set all day. 2 minutes, 1 minute.
Nice.
She was like, I was just waiting for you guys to tell me to be quiet.
Right. And just keeping everybody on schedule, because
she did an amazing job. We definitely needed that person, or we never would have finished, I don't think.
That's awesome. The whole crew.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing crew.
Yeah. So wrap it up for us. If who, obviously you wrote this for yourself, but who would this speak to? Who do you want to share it with?
I think it speaks to anybody who has loved, but especially if you've misplaced your love and you feel silly, or you feel like you're the only person who's ever misplaced your love. Like, if you need company in that little piece of sadness that you're feeling, I really think that this will speak to you. And the more I share this, the more I realize how many people have had the same experience, and it's really humbling, actually, to realize that we're never as alone in our suffering as we think we are. The human experience is really so similar for everyone. And my hope is just that this keeps people company. It keeps you company through that tough time before you reinvent yourself and before you're okay.
Yeah, and even when you are okay, because I'm reading this from a place of being okay. There's still such an emotion that you can connect with. So whether you're in the heat of it or whether you're, in a good place, there's a beautiful story that comes through. Well, so many of them in each one of the poems, but then also the journey that comes through. So I hope you'll read it for yourself and try it out. And I hope that what happens for me happens for you. And that is, I opened it and I just couldn't put it down.
Yes.
It's like, okay, whatever else is going to happen today can wait, because I'm just going to go through it from cover to cover.
That makes me happy. I love that.
Yeah, and a great gift idea too. If you're kind of being a good friend to somebody, you want to cheer them up a little bit.
Absolutely.
A good gift idea too. So
absolutely.
There you have it. Any parting closing words for now?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, for sharing my book. Thank you to Amazon, to people who still care about poetry. It's amazing to me that people still care about poetry, but people do. It really translates. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, so we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Check it out for yourself.
Thanks.